Hello and welcome to the Elevated Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Raylan Davis. I am joined by one of my good friends, Miss Catherine Peters, who helps people with burnout. More importantly, she helps people that are burnt and crispy, professionals, executives, heal from burnout, love their lives, and more importantly, crush their goals still. And that's the big thing I want to talk to you today about. So first and foremost, welcome to the podcast, Catherine.
Thank you, Raylan. Love being here with you, my friend.
Okay, so we're going to dive right in. So the first thing is, I'm going to start with some really deep questions, all right? I have an issue with burnout.
Okay.
And so is burnout a problem or is self-management a problem? So here is why I'm asking you this, right? There are lots of people that are like, I'm burning out. And to me, my ape-like brain, remember, I'm probably more Neanderthal than I am Homo sapien. I look at it and go, you just have an issue with boundaries. You have an issue with not being aligned with what you want. And I say that because, for example, a lot of people that I hear talk about burnout, they're in that 9-to-5 rat race, right? And they're striving to get to the next level, and they're burning out. They're doing all this. And then when you ask them, well, what do you want? Do you even want that next position? And they go, I don't know. And so to me, it's a lack of, you don't know what the hell you want. Plus you don't know how to manage yourself. Right. Which leads to burnout. So I guess my question is burnout really a problem, or do we as humans just suck ass at self-management and knowing what we want?
The answer is yes. Yes.
Yes to all of it.
Yes. See, all of the above. You've identified some of the causes of burnout. And yes, burnout is a big, big problem. And it's burnout has kind of become this very, ubiquitous catchphrase. It's used very casually in our society, but it's actually codified. The World Health Organization has said in 2019, here's what it is. And they gave us the three main signs of burnout. So it is classified as a medical condition. It's actually like a group of symptoms. And it's really, really dangerous because burnout is really the result of stress over time. Stress plus, look at it this way, stress plus time equals burnout. So if you are stressed over time without relief, if you have sustained stress over time, you go into burnout. And it's really, yes, it is a legit problem. What you're talking about, Raylan, are the causes of burnout, the different causes of burnout. How did you end up in this place? Not everybody ends up there because people manage their shit differently. And some are better at it than others. And there are as many different roads to burnout as there are people. But you've identified, two of the biggest issues, which is not knowing what you really want. So you're on this hamster wheel, killing yourself for something that doesn't support you. And so you're not aligned. And so you're expending an extraordinary amount of energy just showing up to do the thing that you don't give a shit about because you're not aligned in the first place. So it takes more energy just to get through your day because you're not aligned. So absolutely picking the wrong thing and not really getting clear on what you want exacerbates the stress and can lead to burnout. And I forget what the other one was that you said. Boundaries. Huge.
Yeah, boundaries.
Huge.
The alignment thing for me makes a lot of sense because one of the things that I was talking to some of my clients about recently was when you're not aligned with what you want and your behaviors, it could feel like you're driving 100 miles per hour on the highway, but you have the e-brake on the whole damn time. And wondering why you're not going anywhere. Yes. And so to me, when I think of burnout, that's what I feel like. It feels like you're just revving the engine and going nowhere when, you know, there's other things. And by the way, like, it's not just, and that's why I wanted you on this podcast, because also entrepreneurs struggle with this too. Like, I struggle with this, like knowing when to stop, because naturally I am a driven person. I will ride this bitch to the wheels fall off. But there is even a time where I have certain, I guess, boundaries you could say, or I know when to stop. So, for example, we have something in our thing where it's like every quarter we're going to go on a 4-day vacation. Like this weekend, actually, we're driving up to you know, up north in Arizona called Payson, and we're going to go canoeing for the day and just get away, no phones, like gone. Now, I had to make that be a part of my lifestyle, because if I don't do that, I will go until I burn out. So
Yeah, but here's the secret, Raylan, that I know about you. Yes, you're brilliant. Yes, you come up with a lot of great stuff on your own, but you had a mentor that taught you that drilled into you when you were young and starting your career, the importance of that. And most people don't get that. They don't have a lot of people don't have a mentor, A of all, and B of all, even if they do, they don't have mentors that are telling them it is really, really important to set those boundaries early on and establish that routine of self-care and of checking out. And I just feel you're so fortunate that you had a mentor that did that for you.
yeah, and I think too, like, what helps me, 'cause I know there's probably people listening to this that go like, yeah, but like, how are you still going to win? Which we'll get into in a minute. How are you still going to grow your business, so on and so forth, if you're not willing to do the extra? And what I liked about the guy that we're referring to, his name is Milton. He was a multimillionaire when he told me this. And so to me, it was like, the proof is in the pudding. One of the things that bothers me about people that usually use words like alignment and energy and that kind of shit is usually they're like, they're broke and they like live in their car, and it's like, shut the hell up. Like, you know, there's nothing wrong with wanting more for your life, and wanting to breathe. So maybe talk to us a little bit about, like, because the people that you help, these are driven individuals, right? Like executives in companies, you know, CEOs, entrepreneurs, people like me, right? That are on the grind. You can't tell them, hey, chill out. That's not a thing. So how can you not burn out, but simultaneously still win? And win is something, I use that like a success, but I like the word win more, right? So it's like, for you, how do you still win, but still not burn yourself out?
Well, first, you have to have a paradigm shift. And it's funny you say the whole like energy crystals, like living in a bus kind of thing,
Yeah.
because my mom was an artist. I got my chakras balanced when I was 16.
Yeah.
Like this shaman came in and like put the crystals on all my like different energy points. I mean, I grew up with that stuff, right? And
by the
then,
way, so did I. Like my aunt, I call her my auntie mom. She's a family friend. She
Yeah.
literally was a lawyer, dropped everything, they literally went to like this random secluded place. I think it was Peru. I can't remember. But then they end up doing ayahuasca. They came back and were shamans. I got my energy cleared too, all that stuff. But it's funny because also the interesting thing, I know somebody else that's kind of into that frequencies, and that's more like what we discussed before, like landmark transformation. He considers it, right?
Right.
But again, my thing is, I'm not poo-pooing on energy. What I look for more is, do you believe in energy, frequencies, being able to all those things, and you also are winning in life.
Right. And so here's the point I want to make about that, because, my mom, the hippie freaky artist who I adore, who showed me what was possible, right? That brain space of possibility. My dad, the CPA, very cynical, incredibly practical. So I grew up, and you're very much like this too, Raylan, like appreciating both. I love the magic in life, but show me the science. Show me the science. And I actually, when I coach my clients, my framework is energy. It is energy. And it's how to level up your energy. But it's based in science and the studies show more and more and more and more as we, now there's the most popular class of all time in Harvard is the study of happiness.
Yeah.
And so more and more in the past 20 or so years, they're doing these long-term studies on happiness and the results in your life. And there is an absolute correlation between higher levels of happiness leading to higher levels of success in all areas of your life. And people always get it backwards. They think as soon as I reach the C-suite, as soon as I am making 6 figures or 7 figures, and that number keeps on, getting higher and higher because you attain that number and you're like, but it doesn't buy as much as it used to, and I still don't have, the freedom I thought I would. So you're constantly chasing something because you think that's going to give you happiness. But what the science shows is by attending to the happiness first, you actually attain higher levels of success. And so also the science of burnout is by doing less and creating space, you actually can accomplish more. And so it's really having to deconstruct this paradigm that we have in Western society especially, that the only path to success is being on that hamster wheel, working 70, 80, 100 hours a week. You have to go at it hard. You have to suffer. You have to pay your dues in order to reap the rewards. And Raylan, I'm just as guilty of that mentality as everybody else. We've been steeped in that mentality. And there are ways to do it differently.
Yeah, I struggle because it's like that balance. And I think we have another client of ours who's very big into energy work. And the one thing I always tell her, same thing I tell you, which is like, I think the world needs yin and yang. For every Catherine, there needs to be the opposite. That's why like people like David Goggins is out there, right? Like the suffer mentality. And we even say, like in our academy, we talk a lot about voluntary suffering because it's going to come regardless. And I came up with that idea of voluntary suffering from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, right? Like suffering is coming regardless if you want it or not. You just got to be mentally and physically prepared for it. With that being said, though, like you could overdo it. Like there is a balance to these things. And I remember the first time I ever started talking to somebody, it was when I really, really got into transformation. And for those that are listening, like transformation starts with the premise that you are not broken. And that's why like transformation versus like therapy, right? And not the poo-poo on therapy, but there is something out there. And it's interesting because more and more people have been going to therapy. Again, I'm not shitting on therapy. More and more people go to therapy, but more and more people think they're broken. And I find that to be incredibly interesting to me, that the more we do therapy, the more people think they're broken. And it's when we start with the premise that we're broken that you'll find that in your summary as well. Versus transformation starts with the premise that you are whole. You have everything you need. You are the source, right? So anyway, with that being said, there was talk. So I was getting into this world and trying to learn more about it. And this guy, he was a multimillionaire. We were having lunch. I took him out to lunch. I'm like, explain this world to me. Because the first thing he talked to me about was the idea of surrender. And I was like, I don't know what the fuck that means. And immediately just all walls went up. I was like, that is not even an option. Okay, I'm a former professional fighter. Like that's not even, like my dad went to prison when I was a kid. Like I literally trained my entire life so that way when he got out of prison, I could protect my family. Surrender is not even something that I didn't even know the word, And he sits me down and he goes, Raylan, I made it 7 figures grinding every single day. And he gave me the most perfect analogy in the world because he said, I was on a boat with a motor on it, revving the engine, nonstop in it. And I was crushing it in terms of finances, but like everything else was falling apart. My marriage was falling apart. Everything was shit, but I was making tons of money. And then he started getting into transformation, and he goes, the whole idea was to surrender. And so he goes, I'm going to surrender. So he starts letting up on the motor and stops revving it as much, and the boat slows down. He starts to panic, right? Money's not coming in like it was. And he's like, oh, shit. Like, but no, surrender. Boat comes to a full stop. He's not making that much money, if any. Then all of a sudden, he starts taking off, going faster than he ever did with that motor. And then he found out, as he looked up, he had a sail the entire fucking time on his boat. And so it was that moment when he explained that to me that I started to understand it a little bit, right? We do this thing, and I'm gonna take it over to martial arts, but in wrestling, it's this grind mentality. I'm going to take you down. There's not shit you can do about it. I'm taking you down. In jiu-jitsu, it's more flow. I'm going to try. If I fail, I got 10 other things I'm going to do, and I'm going to find it eventually, right? The more time. And so once I got into jiu-jitsu, I started piecing it together. So my point is, there's an interesting thing when it comes to surrender that is incredible. My journey right now, in terms of my personal life and business, has been finding what the fuck does surrender mean. Because on one end, you have people that are overly surrender. I'm just letting life dictate, right? The universe this, and okay, that's great, but also explain to me why you're not winning. And by winning, I mean, are you getting what you want? And there's this problem that I have with certain people that I'm like, yeah, that's fine, because there's an excuse factor. It's okay that didn't happen. No, actually, it's not. It's not okay, because you could have learned the lesson and we could tweak it for next time. So again, like, I don't know, what are your thoughts on the idea of, again, how do we find that balance once again between not using burnout, not using, not overdoing it as a cop out, but also not fucking killing ourselves? Where is that balance?
God, that's such a good question. And here's a shameless plug. Work with a coach. Work with somebody outside of your circumstance that can give you some objective feedback, because those metrics are it's almost impossible, especially if we're in burnout. It's next to impossible to make those judgment calls for ourselves. We just can't see the bigger picture, and we can't see those levers that you could push that could use 10% of the effort to get 90% of the results. The creative thinking, the out-of-the-box thinking that can reduce the effort without reducing the results. It's just when you are in burnout, it is so difficult to think creatively. Scientifically, it's difficult to think creatively, because your brain, what the body does when you're in burnout is it shuts down resources, because over stress, it's a stress response, right? And when we are a stress response is dealing with an immediate threat. That's all a stress response is. So it's shutting down all available resources to maximize the potential of dealing with the immediate threat. And so what that means is you have less blood flow, you have narrower vision, your cerebral cortex doesn't function as optimally. And this is the science. This is the science. This is not the woo-woo. This is the science behind the burnout. So it's really difficult to think creatively, and it's really difficult to gain enough perspective. And the other thing that happens when you're in burnout is that you get this really defeatist mentality. And so the tendency is to withdraw. The tendency is to self-flagellate, beat yourself up. So it can be really hard to make objective value judgments from that brain space. Again, why it's incredibly useful to work with a coach at that point, because it's so difficult to do it on your own.
Yeah, the coaching thing is also like interesting, because it's like I think, I've been going back and forth with the coaching industry as of late, because I started hiding my coaching in the services that I provide. So I coach my clients, right? But like I do it through like I'm providing a service, and then I also like I sneak the coaching in. And the reason why I bring that up is because I think that it's important, I think, to get a coach that lives, and I said this before, but you don't hire a coach for the information, you hire a coach for the lifestyle. And so, and especially when it comes to burnout, like I think people need to find a coach that's living the life that they want. So like for me, if I'm going through burnout right now, I want to find somebody that is crushing it in business, but also is a good father or a good wife, like that is a good mother, a good, husband, a good wife. Like I want, like, are you balanced? Because, that's something that I think is important versus like, I think what people are doing now, which is interesting is they're hiring for the information. Oh, Catherine has the secret keys to unlock this for me. No, she fucking doesn't. She's just going to make sure that you fall in line and get a line, so on and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, that's the funny thing. I mean, people think that coaches have the secret sauce. And what we do is we have the methods to get the secret sauce out of you. You have the secret sauce for your own life. We just draw it out of you. And that's one of the things that makes a good coach is that it's very individualized because you have your own secret sauce. You, Raylan, you know what makes you tick. You know what's important to you. Now, if you haven't done a lot of self-reflection, if you're not actually Raylan, or you've been on the wrong hamster wheel for too long and you're in burnout, you may not have clarity on what's important to you. You may need somebody to help you figure that out, but you do know.
Yeah.
It just may not be clear. It may be hidden. It may be warped at the current moment.
Well, that's why every coaching call I do, I start with, what do you want? And it's funny because I have one client, like Elisa, Elisa, she takes coaching from me every single week. Every single week we start with the same question. What do you want? Because my job is to make sure, like, if that changes every week, there's an issue. Like, we got to figure out, okay, do you really want this? Do you want to really like this? And I think that's where, again, coaching, journaling, but you brought up something that's really important, which is the self-awareness part. And self-awareness is so interesting to me because I didn't, so like if you were to ask somebody, hey, are you self-aware? They'd be like, fuck yeah, I am, right? But then you go, what do you want? And they go, I don't know. Clearly you're not that self-aware, right? Like, and the thing is, it's funny because growing up, I thought something was wrong with me because of how much time I would spend in my own head being like, well, I wonder why I did that. Why did I just think that? Where did that thought come from? Is there something here? What's going on? Like everything, including, and obviously, it could be to a detriment, right? Because I overanalyze a lot of different things, especially like my biggest my biggest problem I'm looking to solve is being a father. So like, I don't have a blueprint for that. Like I said earlier, my dad went to prison when I was a kid. So even like last night, okay, he's not eating his food, and I'm in my head like, okay, my job is to make this kid fucking eat. Do I sit here and make him eat like my parents did every single thing? Or do I, if he's full, make him stop? But how do you know? Okay, do I need to be authoritative or do I need to talk to him? Like there's so many different, and then it doesn't matter what I do. I'm like, so the point of saying all that is, I don't know. The funny thing about burnout is, and this is the fun of working with you, is figuring out at what point does somebody, I don't know that somebody can know that they're in burnout until it's too late.
Well,
because most people are not aware.
That is so true. And that was a big eye-opener to me. And I shouldn't have been surprised. I should not have been surprised. I was that person who had no idea I was in burnout. I knew I was exhausted all the time. I knew I was, I knew I was disillusioned. I knew I was cynical. But I kind of thought everybody was disillusioned and cynical in my industry. Come to find out, they're not. They're not. Yeah. No, that was me at that time. And so when I started coaching around burnout, I thought people would just know that they were burnt out. And the biggest shocker to me is that they don't. that they don't, which is why I spent a lot of time talking about what the symptoms are. But I also want to coach people who are stressed, because stress is what leads to burnout. So I want to coach people who are incredibly stressed, because I want to catch them before they get to burnout. Because when you are stressed, we can deal with that. When you are in burnout, it can take a very long time to heal from that. You know, it's a lot harder to heal from burnout than it is to unwind stress. So yeah, catch it early.
You're like, one of the things that I'd love for you to talk more, and I've been playing around with this too, and I think I'm going to start talking about this as well, which is the idea of resistance. Like, I always look for language that people would would co-sign on, right? I always give the example of like mindset. Hey, does your mindset suck? No one's going to say yes to that. Versus like, are you burning out? Do you feel tired? Like, yes. Okay. Guess what? We're going to do some mindset work on you. Like, psych. It's like that old marketing term, right? If they want cake, you sneak some broccoli in there. But the idea, like, to me is like, you know, for me, it's like, if we want to catch them earlier, I think it's a matter of like, it can be easier. Like, I think like that tagline of like, yo, did you know it could be easier? Because like, even everything with coaching, like I was just giving an example in my stories on Instagram the other day about Tim. And I said, because, you know, he did a masterclass on branding for my community. And I said, look, guys, like I built my business the scrappy way, quote unquote, right? Like for 2 years, I just reached out to people and got them on calls and I sold them. And then I met Tim, worked on branding, and those same results that took me 2 years took me weeks to get. And so it was because, turns out, with good branding, like, people come to you. The sale gets easier. The offer makes more sense. So there was no more resistance. So to me, it's like, how do you create a life? And I love the idea of alignment. I love the idea of decreasing resistance to get what you want in life and in business. Like, that to me is what you actually do. You're going to decrease the resistance so that they can go farther, go faster, and not be as stressed. Like we were talking about this before, but it was like this idea of like, did you know you could get to your goals without killing yourself? Did you know that's a possibility? The downside is, and this is where you get, you know, Neanderthals like me, and this is something that I have to like, I'm always battling with, which is I love the pain of things. Like, there's something, I love the pain of it.
Here's the difference, and here's what I want to talk to you about. I want to circle back around because it's been niggling at me since you brought it up. This thing about suffering. And this is so weird, Raylan. I mean, you and I have talked about how, like, weird the universe can be.
Yeah.
I just had this experience this morning. Have you ever heard of Pema Chodron?
No.
She is a Buddhist nun. And
Interesting.
She's really, really well known. And I was listening to a podcast. Oprah, you know, now has a podcast, and she has that Super Soul Sunday type audience where it's all these kind of spiritual teachers on this podcast. And I've been listening to one on happiness because that's my jam. And Pema Chodron was on, and I recently got COVID, as you know, and my main symptom has been these excruciating headaches and really low energy. And it's been taking me for a ride, and it's been like 3 weeks of this. And I woke up this morning like, oh my God, another one. And I just wanted to cry. I just wanted to curl up in a ball and cry. I was so demoralized by this unrelenting pain. And I go for my walk because I'm like, okay, I just need to get the blood flowing. I'll feel better. And I'm listening to Pema Chodron and Oprah interview her. And Pema Chodron has these meditations on suffering. And in the Buddhist, it's not really religion, but in the Buddhist practice, there's a difference between pain and suffering. Pain is a given. Suffering is optional.
Mm-hmm.
The pain of having a headache is a given. Like, it hurts. My head is pounding. I feel like shit. That's what is. The suffering is my story, that this shouldn't be happening. Poor me. My life sucks. I'm not getting as much done. I'm failing in my business because I'm at 50% productivity. I mean, I'm a coach. I still have this mental bullshit all the time. You know, I mean, just all of these mental messages, all this mental garbage going on, this story that I'm creating in my head as a result of the pain. That's the suffering, and that's a choice. Mm-hmm. Pain is a given, but suffering is optional. And so the way I look at it is, when you are building a new business, when you are giving effort to anything, there's going to be pain. There's going to be stuff you don't want to do. There's going to be stuff that's hard. And there's this old saying that I love, which is choose your hard.
Yeah.
You want to have this hard? Do you want to have the hard of being broke, or do you want to have the hard of learning a new skill? You know, do you want to have the hard of a failing business, or do you want to have the hard of putting your big girl panties on and talking to people that you don't know, even if it's scary? So pain is going to occur, but suffering, which are all of these stories that we make about it, that we create in our minds about it, that is optional. And that is what I feel like we have agency over.
No, I totally agree, and I think that because it goes back to the quality of one's life depends on the quality of thoughts, right? Like, you have a choice of how you view the world. Because also, like, Alisa actually brought this up in our discussion the other day in our community. She said, you know, she got this from somebody else, and I would love to quote them, but I can't remember. Basically, your brain anyway is in a very in darkness and encased in darkness. So we're hallucinating all the time anyway. So why not make up the way that you see the world? Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is not shit ain't real anyway, so let's make it up as we go. So
yeah, we're always looking at the world through our filter. Always. Yeah. By default, I think, we are always looking. I'm always seeing the world through a cat filter. You're always seeing the world through a Raylan filter. Mm-hmm. Always.
And I think the suffering thing came to me because there was two big things that happened. One was obviously, I mentioned earlier, reading Viktor Frankl's Man's for Meaning, because I was going through a really, really hard time in my life. I was going through like some really dark personal shit, and I read that book, and everyone that I know that's ever gone through anything hard, I go read that book. Because you can't read that book and still feel bad about yourself, because you're like, what the fuck am I complaining about? And like this man literally wrote a whole ass book during the Holocaust. What am I? I'm mad because somebody cut me off, or I'm mad. I'm sad right now because okay, whatever.
Because I don't have another zero in my bank account.
Yeah, like what am I even doing right now, right?
Right.
And then the other thing was, as a kid, I realized I didn't have the most like American dream life, you know, and even in middle school we were evicted a few times from our house, and but basically up until 8th grade we were living in a motel, and I was washing my clothes in the sink and then air drying and had the same clothes like sometimes multiple days in a row, and nobody knew, right? And I remember hearing my friends, because my mom was smart enough to take us from the inner city of Detroit to move us to the suburbs. And we were by far, obviously, the poorest kids in the suburbs, but she knew education was the way out, right? So she was like, let's get them involved with people and whatever. So anyway, at the time I was pissed because I was like, at least if we were in Detroit, like I wouldn't be the only broke kid, but you know, whatever. But obviously now I'm happy about it. But one of the things I noticed was I remember listening to my friend complain about their life. And meanwhile, we're sitting in his basement, and it was probably a $500,000 house. Both his parents are around. Let's start there. They both have jobs. They're home for dinner.
They're in prison.
Yeah, like I'm like sitting there thinking to myself, like, what in the fuck are you? Like, I didn't say anything because I was at least a decent friend, but I'm thinking to myself, like, this is the problem. And it was that aha moment of, oh, it's all relative. Like, to me, that doesn't mean shit. But and then I made this switch, and I'm pretty sure it was a counselor, and I'm very thankful for the school counselors, you know, in Michigan. I'm really thankful that there's a place called the Women's Haven where like after domestic violence, you can go and stay there. And I'm really thankful for all those people because they helped me turn myself from a victim into a victor. And so I remember talking to a counselor in the school once, Miss Tracy Neo, who literally the most wonderful woman in the world, rigged actually the Big Brother, Big Sister. Do they have that out there? Like Big Brother, Big Sister program?
Oh, yeah.
So she rigged it so that way I would have her husband as my big brother. It was amazing, dude. Anyway, so enough on that. So, but she goes, that's a strength you have, Raylan, that most of these people have never been what you've been through. And so your ability to endure is greater than anybody that you will probably meet. Your ability to endure. So then I go, okay, but what about Joe Schmo who's never been through shit in his life? That's not fair. And then again, this was years later, I started talking about actually in corporate, when I was doing sales training, I started talking about voluntary suffering and going, that is okay that your life was cushy and sweet, but this job, aka sales, sucks. You got to make 200 dials and you're going to get told and swore at, you're going to get told no a lot. You will not make it in this job unless that becomes the easiest thing you do every day. So the voluntary suffering became not mentally beating yourself up, but it was just go do something hard that day, right? And hard is relative, right? So maybe for one individual, it's going for a walk every morning and being disciplined and doing that. For me, it's like, can I literally go to jiu-jitsu and not break? As you can tell, I have a huge cut on my face from jiu-jitsu. I just got back. So like for me, that's my hard, because at the end of the day, if I do that and another man tries to choke me unconscious and I get on a sales call an hour later, and the person goes, Raylan, I can't do it right now. And they tell me no. They go, Raylan, your offer sucks. Get out of here. Guess how much it affects me? 0%. Because literally an hour ago, a grown man tried to choke me unconscious. Now, not everybody's going to do jiu-jitsu, but my point is, I think suffering is optional. And that's why I call it voluntary suffering. Like I am choosing to put myself in a position where I can endure more mentally. And again, I want to make sure this is clear, because there's some other people that are like, you got to talk shit to yourself. Like I don't do any of that, right? I tried to not do that because that causes resistance, going back to what we were talking about. But if the hardest thing, what is the saying? The hardest thing you've been through is the hardest thing you've been through. Like that's the saying. And so if I'm looking at my life, because here's the truth, and the stuff that people don't talk about is that, you know, I'm at year 4, maybe some shit. I don't know. Year 4, year 3, maybe in entrepreneurship. The first 2 years, Kat, sucked ass. Okay? It was terrible. Okay? I made enough to get by. I had some really big highs and helped big, whatever. I did really well the second year, but it wasn't aligned. It was chaos. It wasn't until this year that things started putting together. But my point is, without those 2 years, one, you can't be grateful for what I have now, right? Because there's something about when shit comes easy to you the first time, and this is my humble opinion, you're just not grateful for it, right? Like, and I think there is a toll to pay. Now, how much is that toll is the question we're talking about here today. You know what I mean? Like, do you have to put yourself in copious amounts of debt? No. But at the same time, like to get to that next level, like for me, one of the hardest things I had to do as an entrepreneur to get to the point where I'm not, I had to delegate. So I hired a bunch of people. I got people to expand. I white labeled this and did this. I made this thing. And when I first started, the first 3 months of doing this, I was like, I am either an idiot. I remember telling Kayla, I'm the biggest idiot or I'm a genius. I don't know which one. We're going to figure it out. Because I was dropping, again, I was making maybe at the time 10 grand, but I was spending 11 for 3 months. And I was like, fucking gee, and then 4 months later, 5 months later, boom, hits. And not to mention too, the way that I built it, I have less time. So I don't know. I keep going back and forth on this burnout situation. And part of me believes in, like we talked about before, the sprint method. Suffer, go through it for a quarter, 3 months, whatever your limit is, because everyone's limit's a little bit going to be different, right? Like if you're first starting doing this, it's kind of like meditation. Like don't try to meditate for an hour. You're not going to be able to do it. Meditate for like a minute and then expand it. Maybe just do as much as you can in a month that you can endure, and then you break.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you and say two things about this, Raylan. Number one, how old, I'm going to ask a question first. How old are you?
32.
Okay. Yeah. got 20 years on you. And a lot of the people that I'm talking to are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and they've been doing this. They've been doing it for weeks, months, years on end. And when you have been going that hard and that long without appropriate rest and without appropriate, recuperation, replenishment, it takes longer to heal. It takes longer to get back to baseline.
Yeah.
And for some,
like
it
you're
could
so
take
far
years.
in the hole.
I mean,
it just takes
for me, it took me over a year after I got off the hamster wheel. Of course, I also had breast cancer. I had the major wake-up call. Like, I really need to learn how to do this. I really have to get off the hamster wheel. And it took me over a year to learn how to rest and to give myself permission to do it and for my body to do it. It took me over a year to do that.
Here's a dumb question. What is rest?
That's a great question. Oh my God. And that's a whole podcast. Actually, there's a whole book on that called Sacred Rest by Sandra Dalton Smith. I'm going to plug another woman who talks about rest. She talks about the 7 different kinds of rest, because rest means different things to different people, and the same person needs different kinds of rest at different points in their day and their lives. So I'm not just talking about taking a nap. Like, that's physical rest. You also need spiritual rest, and that means like a purpose. Are you aligned? You need social rest. Do you have
I need social rest all the time.
Chill with your buds?
Yeah, I hate people. Turns out. I found this out recently. I need social rest all the time. Because I also talk for a living, right? And so by the weekend, I'm like, don't text me. Don't call me. Leave me the hell alone.
Solitude. You need solitude.
I am an introvert who acts like an extrovert. Like, it's so funny. People don't believe me, but I'm dead serious.
No, I get it. I'm the same way. Like, I recharge by being alone. And if I don't get my alone downtime, I get exhausted and depleted really easily. So, that's critical for you to recharge your batteries. I have a client, her form of rest is going and taking a walk in the sunshine.
Yeah.
So it really, meditation, some people need their brains to rest. And actually, I say some people, I'm just going to say blanket all of us, every single one of us. Our visual cortexes need to rest. They're so freaking overstimulated. But that's one of the reasons that meditation is so great for us. And we see scientifically all these great benefits is because you're resting your prefrontal cortex. So yeah, totally. There's so many different kinds of rest depending on where the exhaustion is coming from. So but what I wanted to say about, this whole, what you're talking about, which is go hard and then rest, go hard and then rest. You're talking about somebody who's 32 years old who's given himself the gift of doing that. Somebody who's 52 years old who's never given himself of the cyclical period of going hard and then resting may need a lot more downtime. And even just the physical change that happens as we get older dictates that you need longer periods of rest. And your physical makeup, your physiology, some people are fine on 6 hours of sleep a night. Some people need 9 hours of sleep a night. We're very individualized. Some people have lower stress thresholds than others, and so maybe they don't need to be air traffic controllers. So there's so much that goes into it. You can't have this blanket statement of just, go, take a period of rest, because that doesn't work for everybody. And then the other thing I want to say about that, Raylan, is you're exactly right. Because what I've experienced, if you have the good fortune, and I always say this, of being an entrepreneur, because I think being an entrepreneur is just freaking awesome. I love it. if you have the good fortune of being an entrepreneur, you probably have noticed these cycles of like this explosive growth, and you're so creative and you're energized and you're on it and you're putting out all this content and your juices are flowing and you're thinking creatively and you know, you're firing on all cylinders and you're making stuff happen. Usually that is followed by a period of contraction.
Mm-hmm.
You're tired. You may be depleted. You may, I call it turtling, where I just go in my shell, you know? And for a lot of high performers, you know, like us, we look at that like something's wrong. Like we're like, what's going on? Something's wrong. It's part of the natural cycle of ebb. It's an ebb and flow of explosive growth, and then a period of dormancy where under the surface things may be percolating, and soon enough you have some explosive growth. I mean, it's kind of a natural cycle, but we battle this cycle because we think we have to be on at 100% all the time. So those are my 2 points to make.
Well, I also think that like it keeps going back to self-awareness. Like I'm fortunate enough to where I know myself relatively pretty well. And that's why, like, for example, with what we do, I gave the team, like, you had me for 3 months and had me in everything. By the beginning of the year, I need everybody in their spot and how they're going to own that spot, because I'm going to be on and building another business. So, like, I know that in a certain amount of time, I'm going to get bored. Like, I know myself very well, and so it's like I want to be in the weeds at the beginning, and then I want to be high level. Like, I'm still going to be around for, like, you know, if something goes wrong, or and the overall vision of A, the company, and B. And what's so funny is Kayla's the one that actually helped me be okay with making this decision to, like, do this and have this cycle of that. Because I remember we're sitting at the bar, eating, and I was like, we're talking through, okay, next steps and who we need to hire and whatever. And I said, you know, the last thing we're going to give away is the sales calls. And I said, you know, but I would feel bad giving away that, because then if I do that, then what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And she goes, be the damn CEO. Like, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So I think it's that self-awareness thing. And that's why and I want to kind of finish this with your process, because I love that you start with the awareness. And you start actually with, I was super geeked up when I saw what you start with, which is the ELI assessment. So maybe go into, again, your process and how do you take somebody that maybe is, you know, like you said, like they've been doing this shit 20 years. They've been, you know, on that hamster wheel. They've gone from, because of one position that I think needs this more than most people are not willing to admit is the VP of sales. Because the VP of sales, I know so many that, you know, if you're in the world at all, the VP of sales at a given company only lasts 18 months. Because when things go wrong, yes. Because when things go wrong, the CEO always fires the VP of sales. That's the first thing go.
Sucks.
Always. So that position, generally speaking, is rotating. And then on the flip side, though, it's not always the company's fault. On the flip side, though, the VP of sales, you have to remember, they're driven people. And after 2 years, they get bored, and then they want the next, you know, challenge or whatever.
Yeah.
So I, like, for them, that's stressful as shit. Every 2 years having to look for a new job, every 2 years having to, it's usually when you come into a company, their process sucks, you got to revamp and whatever. So anyway, maybe talk to us about, again, that process for you, like starting with the awareness, and then what does that kind of like process working with you look like?
Okay, so we're going to go back to what sounds like the woo, but is really science. It's all about energy. And what I do is help people figure out where they are energetically. And then during our coaching relationship, I teach them how to level up their energy. And so the ELI is a fantastic assessment, which helps, it gives people a snapshot of where they are energetically right now. Like, how are they perceiving the world under normal circumstances, And then how are they dealing with stress? And when we talk about energy, we're talking about catabolic versus anabolic energy. Two different kinds of energy. Catabolic energy is this kind of tearing down, destructive energy, and it's associated with high levels of stress. And catabolic hormones, you might have heard of adrenaline and cortisol. These are hormones in the body that actually tear down the cell walls so that the energy inside the cells can be released and used to deal with the threat that's causing the stress, right? So catabolic energy can be useful in short-term situations in some circumstances. But when you're using it as kind of your default, it's incredibly destructive and it's not useful. And so catabolic thoughts, emotions, feelings can be that victim energy, catabolic, or overwhelm, fear, anger, judgment, anything that's really heavy judgment, like right, wrong, good, bad. And in burnout, what I see a lot is overwhelm and a sense of helplessness and hopelessness, because people in burnout are at a point where they don't feel like they have control over anything in their lives. The locus of control is outside of them. All of those are characteristics of catabolic energy. Anabolic energy, building up, that is your awesome, fantastic energy, and that's associated with those fantastic hormones like serotonin and dopamine, all those feel-good hormones that you have access to when you are quote-unquote running on all cylinders, right? And so thoughts that occur when you have a catabolic energy mindset are very collaborative, very creative, outside the box thinking, very teamwork oriented, and very solution focused instead of problem focused. Instead of I can't, it's how can we? So simply by asking different questions, you get different results. But when you're in a catabolic state of mind, those questions aren't even available to you, right? And so when I'm working with my clients in burnout, first it's giving them the awareness of the energy mindset that they're in, and then teaching them how to level up their energy into more anabolic states of energy. And what our studies show is that when you have these higher anabolic levels of energy, you perform at higher levels across the board in terms of leadership, in terms of job performance, in terms of creating wealth, in terms of life satisfaction, you name it. You have better success when you have higher levels of anabolic energy. And there's a lot more detail and subtlety in that model, within that model, but I'm just giving you the broad brushstrokes. And I'm also going to add that Forbes actually rates the ELI as one of the top 10 business assessments because it's so incredibly useful in terms of teaching people these leadership qualities. Because Raylan, and I know that incredible leaders lead by their being. They lead by their energy. And we've all seen examples of this. These incredible leaders that lead with this charisma. They walk in the room and people want to follow them. They don't have to lead by force. They just lead by being. And that's the power of anabolic energy.
So then you have the assessment that kind of tells you where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're going to go through the strategies to get them back to getting back to anabolic. Is that right? And then it's like, because the
And so,
assessment becomes like, hey, where are you at? Like, is this working?
yes.
And I kind of like that because then again, you can tell whether or not it's working or not. Instead of just anecdotally, like, today I felt good, you know?
So we take the assessment at the beginning of the coaching relationship, and this gives us a really great idea of how they're operating in the world. It's kind of like a description of their operating system. How are they operating under ideal circumstances, and how are they showing up under stress? So it gives us an incredibly insightful awareness into behavioral tendencies that may be tripping them up. So then during the coaching relationship, we work to unwind that and find better ways to operate. We level up their operating system. And then at the end of the coaching relationship, we do another follow-up assessment. And that's always fun because you see in black and white the growth that's occurred over the coaching relationship. You can actually see people level up their energy. So it's always really fun to do that at the end.
Yeah. So then at the end, I mean, what keeps them staying on that path? 'Cause I would imagine, like, look, if I was your client, I would crush it as I would be your best client because, you know, I'm competitive. And then probably a year later, I'm gonna hit you back up and go like, "Hey, I fucked up again." So how do you maintain after you have that balance?
That's a really good question. And I actually find some of my clients doing exactly that because life gets lifey, and different circumstances and different challenges occur, and they reach back out to me and say, "Hey, I'm kind of struggling with this." And then we renew the coaching relationship, we work through it, they sharpen their skills, they're off to the races. We're never done growing. We're never done. There is always an opportunity to level up. But here's what I can tell you for sure. Once you have that self-awareness, you never don't. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So once you learn these skills, you never don't have them. You're never going back to baseline. You're never going back to where you were at the start. Now, how effectively you're using your newly acquired skills in your life, you develop those skills over time, and mastery of those skills occurs over time. I will tell you, by the end of a coaching relationship, people are killing it. They're firing on all cylinders. They feel so much better. They're doing so much better in their lives.
I feel like the real skill that you're really giving people is that art of detection. Like, oh, I know what the fuck that is. I know that feeling. Where's that coming from? Okay, let's assess.
Yes.
What do we do now? Boom.
Yeah.
Versus just allowing, again, it's like that autopilot of life. Like, I'm just going to let
Yeah.
this shit happen to me.
Yeah.
And then next you're in burnout. So I feel like you really give people that detection, that radar of
Yes.
going, oh, I know what this is.
What I say is we give people a choice. You have
Yeah.
a choice now of how you want to react to any given circumstance instead of just being the victim of circumstance.
Yes. And again, this is why, I was so excited to actually meet you and get to work with you. Because again, that everything that we do is around giving people freedom. Right? Like, you deserve freedom. But the funny thing is, like, you can't have freedom without discipline. It's like the old, everyone says Jocko Willink came up with it, but it's actually Eisenhower that started that freedom, discipline equals freedom. But you have to be disciplined enough to see the signs, right? And go like, all right, I'm going to choose something differently this time, and being aware of it. Like I said, like, and that's just, and again, I love what you do because it's also not just about business. It could be like, it is perfectly possible for you to get burnt out from fucking family or friends that always need shit from you and whatever. Like, it's seeing the sign and going, oh, I don't have to choose that path. I know where it goes. And I think that's the thing that I don't want to say frustrates me. Because I'm trying hard not to take things personally. But the thing that, like, really grinds my gears about people in general.
I love it. The thing that really grinds my gears.
is when I see, and here's the thing, right? And it's not my place to be frustrated. That's why I'm tiptoeing here a little bit, because I've been there. But when it's like, I'll talk to someone, right, and they'll go, well, I don't always do it this way. This is the way I do it. Okay, cool. Do you like where you're at? No. Then what the fuck are you bringing that up for? Because it's not serving you. And that's the thing. To me, it's always, is this serving you the way that you want it to? Because everything serves you, right? Like even being scared, fear, not stepping up, not doing something, that does serve you because it protects you. The question is it serving you the way you want? And my frustration is, and this is like, I think the best way to articulate elevated as all of the things that we do comes down to what we just talked about, which is freedom. I want you to, it's not my job to walk you through the door. I just want to show you the doorknob. Did you know there's something behind this that you could have? I can't, and I used to struggle with this, and I'm getting a lot better, where I would open that door and I'd drag your ass to that door. You're coming. One of the things, and this comes back to surrender, was recently I realized it was actually, I told the story before, but it was actually, there's a kid that I used to coach wrestling for. He was a kid in high school, and I don't coach teams because I hate kids. But, like, I love my kid, but, like, other people's kids, like, I don't do it. With wrestling, it's just a pain in the ass, and I just don't do well with it. But this kid, literally, the parents were like, literally, do whatever you want to him, just make him better. And I go, cool. And I liked it because wrestling to me is the best way to teach a man how to be a man. It's what taught me how to be a man. Again, I didn't really have a good role model, so wrestling taught me how to be a better man. Anyway, so I'm coaching this kid, and I'm getting pissed off because every practice he's not doing he's not doing exactly what we say. He's not doing the eating that we talked about. He's not doing this, not doing that. And then we get to the mat. He'd crush it in practice, get to the mat, and I'd see him quit. And it used to drive me fucking insane. Why are you like, don't tell me you're not quitting because I'm watching you do it. And then his mother, of all people, pulled me aside and goes, you can't want it more than him. And I realized I was doing the same thing with my clients. I would go, here's everything you need. You just need to do X. And they wouldn't do it. And I get pissed. Because then they come to me and they complain about their lives. I'm broke. I'm this. I'm that. I'm like, all you got to do is do exactly what I'm saying. And then again, it's going. So one of my biggest lessons that I've learned recently is that art of going, I'm going to do as much as I can because I love you. Because I love all of them. I mean, hopefully you feel the same. But I love all my clients. Like, I want everybody to win.
You love me the most.
I love you the most, yes. And I love all my clients. I want them all to win. But also, if I get you to a place and you don't accept that new place, that's on you. And I have to be okay with that. And that is my, if I'm out of all the things that I'm working on, this will be our last question. It's a new segment I'm doing on the podcast. But one of the things that I'm working on is when is it okay to let go? That's surrender. So my question for you is, for your business, for you and your own personal journey, what is something that you're working on? Because the reason why I want to start asking this to the people that come to the podcast, and obviously my clients and stuff too, but is because I want to, there's a thing going on that I don't like with the coaching industry, which is we paint ourselves to be fucking perfect. I got it all figured out. No, I don't. Look, my clients and the people that come to the Coaches Academy, let's be real, I'm a few steps ahead of you guys. That's it. I've just figured out 2 things more than you. And it's like teaching, the old teaching thing. I remember when I went to school to be a teacher, I was like, how the fuck do you guys know the whole damn book? He goes, we don't. We just read 2 chapters ahead. Like, what are you talking about? Right? So anyway, but what is something that you're currently working on that maybe people can make people more aware and also help them grow? But what is something that is going to help you get to the next level, or if I dare say, elevate you a little bit?
So I think the thing that I struggle with, are you just talking like mentally, or are you talking
anything mentally? What
I think the thing I struggle with most is something that I also coach my clients around. It's kind of like you end up coaching what you need to learn.
Yeah, we all do.
Have you noticed that?
Yeah, we all do. Yeah.
And it's when I have physical limitations that I just get so frustrated because I am too fatigued, or you like the freaking headaches. Like it's almost like I've had mono for this past 3 weeks. So what happens is I feel like a failure. Like I have these physical limitations that keep me from working an 8-hour day or a 6-hour or whatever. Like, and I use calendar blocking. You know, I do all these productivity hacks, and I'm usually pretty good at managing my time. But my productivity has dipped pretty dramatically over the past 3 weeks. So my time horizon for some of my projects is just, you know, keeps getting pushed out. And my default is to feel like a failure. And I am not alone in that. And it is one of the first things I coached around, because it is one of the first lessons I needed to learn when I was teaching myself how to rest. It was trying to unwind my value from the number of checks on my to-do list. My value as a human being is not determined by the number of checks on my to-do list. And that has been such a huge part of my psyche for so many years that it is not a one and done thing. It is not just, oh, I fixed that thought, I fixed that belief pattern. No, it is constant. It is constant. One of my favorite sayings that I use so many times in my practice, an unattended mind is like a 2-year-old running with scissors. It does unimaginable damage. It is dangerous. And it's because of thought patterns like that. I'm illin, and so I'm a failure. What? That's crazy.
Yeah, I think
so. That's what I'm working on right now, because that's what's up for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a little hack I was talking to the students about the other day, because I discovered this through a book called Driven, which I've talked about to ad nauseam at this point. But the book Driven helped me, one, be more self-aware, but two, maybe not feel alone. Like I thought I was crazy. And then I read this book, and I was like, oh, no, like I'm just genetically predisposed to certain things. Anyway, one of the things that I got from this book, and I'm adopting it a little bit to fit me. And again, I told my students in the academy the other day, like, this works for me. I don't know if it's going to work for you. But I, too, struggle with, if I don't execute, like, go back to martial arts. If I don't execute this move perfectly, I fucking suck. I'm terrible. Whatever. And by the way, that thought pattern used to serve me, and then martial arts doesn't anymore. So one of the things I do now is instead of saying, like, failure is tied into who, right? I am a failure because I didn't do X, Y, and Z. So here's the little hack. It's the silliest thing in the world. Instead of saying I'm a failure, whatever, who am I ask, what am I? That's it. So for example, right, it also helps with like getting distracted. So if I'm on my computer and I know I have to sit through emails and get through all my emails, it's one of the biggest pain points for me ever. I hate emails. Don't email me. I hate it. Okay. But I still have to go through them. Like I'm a damn CEO. It's part of the job. And so in that moment when I'm getting distracted, right, I go, what am I? I'm a man sitting in front of a computer checking emails. The simplicity of that moment, it clears everything and brings me back to the present moment. I'm a failure, it's past, right? Go back to like Eckhart Tolle, who is probably on that podcast with Oprah and also Michael Singer, so on and so forth. There's nothing bad can happen here in this moment. So my things, I always go, what brings me back to the present moment is, what am I? For you, like, when you're like, fuck, I didn't get all this shit done because I don't feel good, and you just go, well, what am I? I'm a woman sitting here with a fucking headache. Now comes the fun part. And by the way, that's it. It's over. Now it's just, that's what I am right now. It's because everyone talks about who am I. Who am I sometimes is such a broad thing that makes you spiral. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's, okay, what am I in this moment? And then everything, the thoughts clear. And then you go, what now? That's the question, which is what now? Now I can choose to do rest, do whatever, and then it's my choice. The thing that I used to say is, I had a client once call me, and she was, struggling with stuff, and she's like crying to me and all this stuff, and I go, where are you right now? By the way, I'm like the worst person to call if you don't like if you, because like this is exactly the conversation. She's crying about this, and I let her talk, and I go, okay, where are you right now? And she's like, what do you mean? I'm in my house. I'm like, no. Where in time are you right now? When did all that take place? 15 minutes ago. All right, is that right now? No. Okay. So what are we talking about? Like, what's happening right now? I'm on the phone with you. Okay, so be here, not there. And then she goes, and then she literally, speaking of failure, every entrepreneur goes through that, right? Including me. I'm no different. But she goes like, Raylan, I'm a failure. And I said, yes, you are. Now what? Sometimes it's just the acceptance of like, whatever the hell. So it's like, I feel like a failure. Yeah. You are. So now what? Anyway,
that's another really great, Raylan, that's actually a really great point. Okay, so I'm a failure, so?
Now what? Like, that's it. It's just weird. Okay, cool. Like, that's dope. Like, all right, what now? So it's like one of those things that's like, and I think, again, like, all these things, and I don't talk about it probably enough, but honestly, all these little, like, tricks and different things, that all came from me fighting. Like, can you imagine being half naked and walking into a fucking cage with another grown, like, human being?
No.
And being in front of thousands? Like, I have lost, like, I have one professional loss, and I broke my ankle in the first round, made it through the third round, but that means for 2 rounds I got my ass beat, okay? And that happened in front of, like, 1,000 people, and then it's been watched on YouTube probably 3,000 times. You know how hard it was to get back to the gym? Like, all these little things, like, you have a bad practice, and you go home, you're like, dude, I'm going to quit. Like, I was a struggling MMA fighter. Like, 1 year, I maybe made $5,000. Like, and I was living, like, anyway, my point is, all this came from martial arts and being like, when you're going through the spiral of fucking, I'm hungry and I'm tired, I don't want to go to practice. Okay, but it's like, all right, all that's true. Okay, but what are you doing right now? I'm still walking to practice. I'm still 1 foot in front of the other, like, whatever. And so, you know, I'm not saying that all these stuff works for me, but one of the things that I have realized, and reading, again, Michael Singer's book, Untethered Soul, Power of Now, is that in this moment, sometimes it's fun to dream about who am I? What do I stand for? What is my purpose? What is my values? What's the universe about? And then sometimes it's equally important to realize that, one, what you are is probably more important in this present moment, and two, that we're on a floating fucking rock in the middle of nowhere, and that eventually you will die. Everyone you know will die. No one's going to remember your fucking name. And at the end of the day, the earth will probably blow up and humans will ever exist. And so guess what? Doesn't matter what you do. Who gives a shit? Do the best you can. So that's like that optimistic nihilism. It's nothing fucking matters.
I like that.
So if nothing matters, do your best. Do the best you can. Yeah. It's optimistic nihilism. That's the thing, right? Because you can be dark though too. Anyway, I appreciate you, Kat. Any final words for the people listening before we jump out of here? I'm gonna have all your links so people can go check it out and get your help. And I know right now too, I'll put your link because I know we do you do a 30-minute comp session to check out and see if there's anything you can do to help people. But is there anything else you want to leave people with thinking about?
Oh God. So many, I mean, I want it to be like the deepest thing ever, but I'm not Eckhart Tolle. I would just encourage people to, don't wait. If you're not burned out, don't wait till you are. That's what I want to say. If you're not burned out, don't wait till you are. Please.
Beautiful. Kat, you're amazing. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank everybody for
right
listening.
Back at you, Raylan.